A black caregiver, Marcus, serves a paralyzed woman named Elizabeth for years with unwavering dedication. One day, Elizabeth hands him a note with a secret that could change everything. What does the note reveal, and how will it affect their future together? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Marcus took a deep breath as he stood on the porch of the grand, silent house. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was his first day as a caregiver for Elizabeth, a woman he'd been told was paralyzed and living alone. He knocked gently on the door, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners as he waited. After a long moment, he heard a muffled voice from inside. "It's open. Come in." Marcus stepped into the dim entryway. The house felt cold and unwelcoming. "Hello?" he called out softly. "I'm Marcus, your new caregiver." "I'm in here," came a sharp reply from what seemed to be the living room. Following the voice, Marcus entered a spacious room. His gaze fell upon Elizabeth, seated in a wheelchair by the window. Her face was set in a hard frown, eyes narrowed as she looked him up and down. "Good morning, Elizabeth," Marcus said warmly, offering a gentle smile. "It's nice to meet you." Elizabeth's lips thinned. "I don't need you here," she said bluntly. "I didn't ask for a caregiver." Marcus's smile faltered, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand this might be difficult for you. I'm here to help make things easier." "Easier?" Elizabeth scoffed. "Nothing about this is easy, and having a stranger in my house won't change that." Marcus took a step closer, his hands open in a gesture of peace. "I know it's not easy, but I promise I'll do my best to—" "To what?" Elizabeth cut him off. "To fix me? To make me feel better about being stuck in this chair?" Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the pain beneath her anger. Marcus's heart ached for her. He could see the hurt in her eyes, the fear and frustration. "No, Elizabeth," he said softly. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to support you in whatever way you need." Elizabeth turned away, staring out the window. "What I need is to be left alone," she muttered. Marcus stood quietly for a moment, considering his next words carefully. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to help Elizabeth, even if she didn't want it yet. Marcus moved quietly through the house, his gentle footsteps barely making a sound on the hardwood floors. He made his way to the kitchen, determined to start his daily routine despite Elizabeth's cold reception. Opening the fridge, he found it nearly empty. He sighed softly, his heart heavy with the realization of how little Elizabeth had been caring for herself. "I'll need to do some grocery shopping," he murmured to himself. With what little he found, Marcus prepared a simple breakfast of toast and scrambled eggs. He arranged it neatly on a tray, adding a small vase with a single daisy he'd picked from the garden outside. Carefully, he carried the tray to Elizabeth, who was still staring out the window. "I've made you some breakfast," he said softly. Elizabeth glanced at the tray, then back to the window. "I'm not hungry," she muttered. Marcus placed the tray on a nearby table. "That's okay. It'll be here if you change your mind." As the days passed, Marcus fell into a routine. He'd arrive early each morning, prepare meals, and tidy up the house. Elizabeth remained distant, often ignoring his attempts at conversation. But Marcus never lost his patience or his smile. One afternoon, as Marcus was dusting the living room shelves, he noticed a collection of art supplies tucked away in a corner. "Do you paint, Elizabeth?" he asked gently. For a moment, Elizabeth's eyes softened. "I used to," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Then, as if catching herself, she added harshly, "Not that it matters now." Marcus nodded, understanding the pain behind her words. "It's never too late to start again," he said kindly. As the weeks went by, Marcus's unwavering kindness began to chip away at Elizabeth's icy exterior. She started accepting the meals he prepared, even mumbling a quiet, "Thank you," now and then. One morning, as Marcus was watering the neglected plants on the windowsill, Elizabeth spoke up. "They like the sunlight," she said softly. Marcus turned, a warm smile spreading across his face, Is that so? Maybe you could teach me more about caring for them. Elizabeth hesitated, then gave a small nod. It wasn't much, but to Marcus, it felt like a breakthrough. His heart swelled with hope as he realized that slowly but surely, his patience and kindness were beginning to soften Elizabeth's demeanor. Marcus had noticed the overgrown garden through the windows many times. It was clear it had once been beautiful, but now weeds choked the flower beds and the grass grew wild. One sunny afternoon, as he was preparing Elizabeth's lunch, he decided to bring it up. "The garden looks like it was once really special," he said gently, setting down a plate of sandwiches. Elizabeth's eyes darted to the window, then quickly away. "It was," she said, her voice barely audible. Marcus sat down across from her. "Did you tend it yourself?" For a moment, Elizabeth's face softened and a ghost of a smile played on her lips. "Every day," she whispered. But then, as if remembering her current state, her expression hardened again. "I could help you bring it back," Marcus offered, his voice full of warmth. "We could work on it together. I bet it would be beautiful again in no time." Elizabeth's hands clenched in her lap. "What's the point?" she snapped, her voice sharp with pain. "I can't do it myself anymore. It's better to just let it go." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes full of compassion. "But you still love it, don't you? We could find a way." "No." Elizabeth cut him off, her voice trembling. "I don't want to, just leave it alone." Marcus nodded, respecting her wishes even as his heart ached for her. He could see the pain in her eyes, the longing she tried so hard to hide. The garden wasn't just a hobby she'd lost, it was a piece of herself. As the days passed, Marcus would often catch Elizabeth staring out at the overgrown garden, a look of deep sadness on her face. He wanted so badly to help her reclaim this part of her life, but he knew he couldn't push. Elizabeth needed to be ready. So instead, he did small things. He'd bring fresh flowers from the local market to brighten up the house. He'd leave gardening magazines on the coffee table, casually mentioning interesting articles he'd read. And always, he'd talk about the garden with hope and possibility, never with pity or regret. As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth's resolve began to soften. She couldn't help but notice Marcus's gentle persistence and genuine interest in the garden. One sunny morning, as he was tidying up the living room, Elizabeth cleared her throat. "Marcus," she said hesitantly, "if you're still interested, maybe we could try working on the garden together." Marcus's face lit up with a warm smile. "I'd love that, Elizabeth. When would you like to start?" They decided to begin that very afternoon. Marcus carefully wheeled Elizabeth out to the overgrown garden, positioning her chair in a shady spot. As he began to clear away some of the weeds, Elizabeth found herself opening up. "See those rose bushes over there?" she said, pointing to a tangle of thorny branches. "They used to bloom the most beautiful pink roses every spring." Marcus paused his work, giving Elizabeth his full attention. "Really? That must have been a sight to see." Elizabeth nodded, a wistful smile on her face. "Oh, it was. I'd spend hours out here tending to those roses. My husband used to joke that I loved them more than him." As Marcus worked, Elizabeth continued to share stories. She told him about the vegetable patch she used to keep, how proud she was of her juicy tomatoes and crisp lettuce. She spoke of lazy summer afternoons spent reading in the shade of the old oak tree, and of the garden parties she used to host for her friends. With each story, Elizabeth's voice grew stronger, more animated. Marcus listened intently, asking questions and encouraging her to share more. He could see the spark returning to her eyes as she revisited these cherished memories. As the afternoon wore on, Elizabeth found herself laughing for the first time in months. She was recounting a story about a disastrous attempt to grow pumpkins when she suddenly realized how much she had shared. "I'm sorry," she said, her laughter fading. "I didn't mean to talk your ear off." Marcus shook his head, his eyes kind. "Please don't apologize. I've loved hearing your stories, Elizabeth. This garden clearly means a lot to you." Elizabeth looked around at the overgrown space, seeing it with new eyes. "It does," she admitted softly. "I thought I'd lost it forever, but maybe Maybe there's still hope for it. Marcus smiled, understanding that she wasn't just talking about the garden. There's always hope, he said gently. We just need to nurture it, one day at a time. As Marcus and Elizabeth spent more time in the garden together, their connection began to grow, much like the tender shoots emerging from the soil. One afternoon, while Marcus was carefully pruning a rosebush, Elizabeth noticed the gentle way he handled the plant. You seem to have quite a green thumb, she remarked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Marcus smiled, his eyes softening with memory. I learned from the best, my grandmother. She had the most beautiful little garden behind her house in the city. Elizabeth leaned forward in her wheelchair, intrigued. Tell me about it, she encouraged. Marcus paused his work, sitting back on his heels. It was like a tiny slice of paradise, he began. She grew everything you could imagine in that small space. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and the most fragrant roses you've ever smelled. As he spoke, Elizabeth could almost see the garden he described. She found herself smiling, caught up in his enthusiasm. Every summer I'd spend weeks with her, Marcus continued. She taught me how to care for each plant, how to listen to what they needed. She always said that gardening was a way of talking to the earth. Elizabeth nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman, she said softly. She was, Marcus agreed, a touch of sadness in his voice. I miss her every day, but being out here, working with plants, it's like having a piece of her with me. As the days passed, Elizabeth found herself looking forward to their time in the garden. She began to share her own knowledge, guiding Marcus on the best ways to care for her beloved plants. Together, they watched as the garden slowly came back to life, mirroring the growing warmth between them. One morning, as Marcus wheeled her out to their usual spot, Elizabeth surprised herself by reaching out and patting his hand. Thank you, Marcus, she said softly, for bringing this back to me. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, his eyes shining with understanding. It's my pleasure, Elizabeth. Now, what do you say we tackle those tomato plants today? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden, Elizabeth's hands trembled slightly in her lap. She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on a distant point beyond the flower beds. Marcus, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, I think I'm ready to talk about it. Marcus looked up from the rosebush he was tending, his eyes filled with gentle concern. He moved closer to Elizabeth's wheelchair, kneeling beside her. I'm here to listen, he said softly. Elizabeth's eyes welled with tears as she began to speak. It was just an ordinary day, she started, her voice shaky. I was driving home from work thinking about what to make for dinner. Then, everything changed in an instant. She paused, taking a shuddering breath. Marcus placed a comforting hand on her arm, encouraging her to continue. A truck ran a red light, Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. I didn't even see it coming. When I woke up in the hospital, they told me I'd never walk again. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face as she continued. Everyone kept saying how lucky I was to be alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt broken, useless. Marcus listened intently, his heart aching for her pain. My friends stopped visiting after a while, Elizabeth confessed. My boyfriend, he couldn't handle it. He left. I felt so alone, so hopeless. I started to think that maybe it would have been better if I hadn't survived at all. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Elizabeth, he said softly, I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. But I want you to know something. You're not alone anymore. Elizabeth looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and gratitude. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Marcus continued. Look at how much you've accomplished already. This garden, it's coming back to life because of you. You haven't given up, even when things were at their darkest. Elizabeth wiped her eyes, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. I don't feel very strong, she admitted. Strength isn't about what you can do physically, Marcus said gently. It's about how you face challenges, how you keep going even when it's hard. And you, Elizabeth, are incredibly strong." As the days passed, Marcus continued his dedicated care for Elizabeth, their bond growing stronger with each shared moment in the garden. However, not everyone in the community viewed their relationship with the same warmth and understanding. One sunny afternoon, as Marcus pushed Elizabeth's wheelchair through the local park, he noticed a group of elderly women whispering and casting disapproving glances their way. Elizabeth, too, caught up in describing a new flower she wanted to add to their garden, didn't seem to notice. Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest but chose to focus on Elizabeth's excitement instead. He smiled, nodding along as she spoke, determined not to let the negativity affect their outing. Later that week, while picking up groceries for Elizabeth, Marcus overheard a conversation between two shoppers. "Did you see that black man with Mrs. Thompson?" one woman asked in a hushed tone. "I can't believe she'd let someone like that into her home." The other woman nodded, adding, "It's not right. Someone should say something." Marcus felt his cheeks burn with anger and hurt, but he took a deep breath, remembering why he was there. He thought of Elizabeth waiting at home, of the progress they'd made together, and his resolve strengthened. Despite these challenges, Marcus found joy in the small changes he saw in Elizabeth. Her smiles came more easily now, and her eyes sparkled when they worked in the garden together. She had even started asking about his family, showing genuine interest in his life outside of their time together. One morning, as Marcus arrived at Elizabeth's house, he found her already awake and waiting for him in the kitchen. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, a warm smile on her face. "I was thinking, maybe we could have our coffee in the garden today." Marcus felt a surge of happiness at her suggestion. It was the first time Elizabeth had initiated spending time outside without his prompting. "That sounds wonderful," he replied, his heart full of pride for how far she'd come. As they sat among the blooming flowers, sipping their coffee, Elizabeth turned to Marcus with a serious expression. I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done," she said softly. "I know I wasn't easy to deal with at first, but you never gave up on me. Thank you." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat, touched by her words. Despite the challenges he faced in the community, moments like these made it all worthwhile. He knew that their growing friendship was making a real difference in both their lives. As the warm summer days began to fade into crisp autumn, Elizabeth's mood took an unexpected turn. One morning, Marcus arrived to find her still in bed, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Elizabeth?" he called softly, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" She turned away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus. It's too hard." Marcus's heart ached at the pain in her voice. He moved closer, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "What's too hard, Elizabeth?" She let out a shaky breath. "Everything. Being trapped in this body, depending on others for every little thing. I feel so useless." Marcus reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You're not useless, Elizabeth. You're one of the strongest people I know." Elizabeth shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "But look at me. I can't even get out of bed without help. How can I live like this?" Marcus squeezed her hand, his voice soft but firm. "One day at a time, that's how. And you're not alone. I'm here with you, every step of the way." For a long moment, Elizabeth was quiet, her tears slowly subsiding. Then she turned to face Marcus, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and lingering sadness. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. Marcus smiled warmly. "Because I see the amazing person you are, Elizabeth. Your accident didn't change that." Slowly, with Marcus's gentle encouragement, Elizabeth agreed to get up and face the day. As he helped her into her wheelchair, she clung to his arm, drawing strength from his steady presence. They spent the morning in the garden, Marcus describing the changing colors of the leaves and the late-blooming flowers. Though Elizabeth remained quiet, Marcus could see her shoulders gradually relaxing, her breathing becoming more even. As the sun reached its peak, Marcus prepared a light lunch and brought it outside. They ate in comfortable silence, the gentle rustling of leaves providing a soothing backdrop. "Thank you, Marcus," Elizabeth said softly as they finished their meal, "for not giving up on me, even when I wanted to give up on myself." Marcus reached across the table, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "That's what friends are for, Elizabeth. We're in this together." As the afternoon wore on, Elizabeth and Marcus sat in the garden, enjoying the gentle autumn breeze. Elizabeth noticed Marcus's gaze drifting to the horizon, a faraway look in his eyes. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Marcus turned to her with a gentle smile. "Just remembering my grandma's garden. It was a lot like this one." Elizabeth's interest was piqued. "Tell me about her," she encouraged. Marcus's eyes lit up. "She was amazing. Raised me after my parents passed when I was little. Taught me everything I know about plants and caring for others." As he spoke, Marcus's voice filled with warmth and love. Elizabeth found herself drawn into his stories, seeing a side of him she'd never known before. "She always said I had a gift for helping people," Marcus continued. "That's why I became a caregiver. But it hasn't always been easy." Elizabeth tilted her head, curious. "What do you mean?" Marcus sighed, his smile fading slightly. "Well, being a black man in this field, some people make assumptions. I've lost jobs because of prejudice, been treated unfairly. But I keep going, because I know this is what I'm meant to do." Elizabeth felt a pang in her heart. She'd never considered the challenges Marcus might face outside of their little world. "That must be so hard," she said softly. "I'm sorry you've had to deal with that." Marcus shrugged, his smile returning. "It's tough sometimes, but I've got big dreams. I want to open my own care facility one day, where everyone's treated with respect, no matter who they are." Elizabeth found herself smiling back, touched by his resilience and optimism. "That's a wonderful dream, Marcus. I believe you can do it." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Elizabeth realized she was seeing Marcus in a new light. He wasn't just her caregiver anymore. He was a friend with his own hopes, dreams, and struggles. "Thank you for sharing that with me," Elizabeth said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "I'm glad I get to know you, Marcus. The real you." Marcus's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you for listening, Elizabeth. It means a lot to me." As they sat together in the garden, Elizabeth felt a warmth in her heart she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was beginning to understand that Marcus was more than just a caregiver. He was a remarkable person with a beautiful soul. As Elizabeth and Marcus sat in the living room enjoying a quiet afternoon, the doorbell rang. Marcus went to answer it, returning with a small envelope in hand. "It's for you, Elizabeth," he said, handing her the letter. Elizabeth's brow furrowed as she opened the envelope. Her eyes widened as she read the letter inside. Her hands began to tremble, and the paper slipped from her fingers. "Elizabeth?" Marcus asked, concern evident in his voice. "What's wrong?" She took a shaky breath. It's from my sister, Sarah. I haven't heard from her in years, not since the accident." Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, gently placing a hand on her arm. "Do you want to talk about it?" Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "After the accident, my family, they couldn't handle it. They stopped visiting, stopped calling. Sarah was the last to leave. She said she couldn't bear to see me like this." Marcus listened quietly, his heart aching for Elizabeth's pain. "And now she wants to reconnect," Elizabeth continued, her voice bitter. "After all this time, she thinks she can just waltz back into my life?" "That must be really hard," Marcus said softly. "It's okay to feel angry and hurt." Elizabeth nodded, wiping away a tear. "I don't know if I can forgive her, Marcus. The abandonment, it broke me." Marcus took Elizabeth's hand in his. "You don't have to decide anything right now. It's okay to take time to process your feelings." Elizabeth looked at Marcus, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you for being here, Marcus. I don't know what I'd do without you." Marcus smiled warmly. "That's what friends are for, Elizabeth. We're in this together." As they sat in silence, Elizabeth felt a wave of emotion wash over her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly grieve the loss of her family, and for the first time, she didn't feel alone in her pain. Marcus stayed by her side, offering silent support and understanding. In that moment, Elizabeth realized how much she had come to trust and rely on him. Their bond had grown into something deeper than she ever expected. As the days passed, Marcus continued to care for Elizabeth with unwavering dedication. However, beneath his warm smile and gentle demeanor, a storm of worry was brewing. One morning, as Marcus prepared breakfast in the kitchen, his phone buzzed with a text from his sister. "Mom's not doing well. Hospital bills are piling up. We need help." Marcus's heart sank. He leaned against the counter, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. The weight of his family's struggles pressed heavily on his shoulders. When he brought Elizabeth her breakfast, she noticed the slight furrow in his brow. "Is everything all right, Marcus?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Marcus quickly plastered on a smile. "Everything's fine, Elizabeth. Just a bit tired today." Elizabeth studied him for a moment but didn't press further. As the days went on, she noticed small changes in Marcus's behavior. His usual cheerful chatter during their gardening sessions became more subdued. Sometimes she caught him staring off into the distance, lost in thought. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden, Marcus's phone rang. He excused himself, walking to the far end of the yard to take the call. Elizabeth watched as his shoulders tensed, his free hand clenching into a fist. When he returned, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sorry about that," he said, picking up his gardening tools. Elizabeth wanted to ask what was wrong, but she hesitated. Marcus had always been there for her, listening to her problems and offering support. She realized with a pang of guilt that she knew very little about his life outside of their time together. As the weeks went by, Marcus's worries began to take their toll. Dark circles appeared under his eyes, and his usual energy seemed diminished. He tried his best to hide it, but Elizabeth could see the strain in his forced smiles and hear the weariness in his voice. One day, as Marcus helped Elizabeth into her wheelchair, she noticed his hands trembling slightly. "Marcus," she said softly, "you know you can talk to me if something's bothering you, right?" Marcus paused, surprise flickering across his face. For a moment, it seemed like he might open up, but then he shook his head, forcing a smile. "I appreciate that, Elizabeth, but don't worry about me. I'm here to take care of you, remember?" As he turned away to busy himself with straightening the room, Elizabeth felt a mix of concern and frustration. She wanted to help Marcus, just as he had helped her. But how could she when he wouldn't let her in? Elizabeth couldn't bear to see Marcus struggling any longer. One afternoon, as he was arranging flowers in a vase, his hands shaking slightly, she decided it was time to confront him. "Marcus," she said gently, "please sit down for a moment." He looked up, surprise etched on his tired face. "Is everything okay, Elizabeth?" "That's what I want to ask you," she replied, her voice filled with concern. "You've been looking unwell lately. I'm worried about you." Marcus sank into the chair beside her, his shoulders slumping. "I'm fine, really. Just a little tired." Elizabeth reached out and placed her hand on his arm. "Marcus, you've been there for me through so much. Please let me be here for you now. What's going on?" For a moment, Marcus was silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Then, with a deep sigh, he began to speak. "It's my mom," he said softly. "She's been sick for a while now, and the medical bills, they're piling up. My sister and I are trying our best, but it's hard." Elizabeth listened, her heart aching for him. "Oh, Marcus," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "I didn't want to burden you with my problems. You have enough to deal with already." "Marcus," Elizabeth said firmly, "you're not a burden. You're my friend. Your problems are important to me." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes. I feel so helpless sometimes. I want to do more for her, but I don't know how." Elizabeth squeezed his hand. "You're not alone in this, Marcus. We'll figure something out together." For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He looked at Elizabeth, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Just having someone to talk to. It means more than you know." As they sat there, hand in hand, Elizabeth realized how much stronger their bond had become. Marcus had always been her rock, and now she could be his. Elizabeth sat in her wheelchair, staring at the letter in her trembling hands. The return address belonged to her estranged sister, Sarah. It had been years since they last spoke, and the sight of her handwriting brought a flood of emotions. Marcus noticed her distress as he entered the room. "Elizabeth? Is everything all right?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. It's from my sister. She wants to reconnect." Marcus knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "That's big news. How do you feel about it?" Elizabeth shook her head, conflicted. "I don't know. We had a falling out years ago. I'm not sure if I'm ready to open that door again." Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family can be complicated," he said softly. "But sometimes, giving them a second chance can be worth it." Elizabeth looked at him curiously. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." Marcus smiled, a hint of sadness in his expression. "I am. My brother and we had our differences, didn't speak for years." "What happened?" Elizabeth asked, genuinely interested. Marcus took a deep breath. "We let pride get in the way. But when Mom got sick, we realized life's too short for grudges. It wasn't easy, but we found our way back to each other." Elizabeth listened intently, her own situation mirrored in his words. "I'm not saying you have to forgive and forget right away," Marcus continued. "But maybe it's worth hearing what your sister has to say." Elizabeth looked down at the letter, then back at Marcus. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if it all goes wrong again?" Marcus placed a comforting hand on her arm. "That's a risk, sure. But what if it goes right? What if this is a chance to heal old wounds?" Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope in her heart. Marcus's words and his own experience with reconciliation made her reconsider her stance. "Maybe you're right," she said softly. "Maybe it's time to at least hear her out." Marcus smiled encouragingly. "That's all anyone can ask for. And remember, no matter what happens, you're not alone. I'm here for you, every step of the way." Elizabeth felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. With Marcus's support, she felt strong enough to face this challenge. She picked up the letter, ready to take the first step towards reconciliation. The day of Sarah's visit arrived, and Elizabeth felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Marcus had helped her prepare, both emotionally and physically, ensuring the house was tidy, and Elizabeth looked her best. As the doorbell rang, Elizabeth's heart raced. Marcus squeezed her shoulder reassuringly before answering the door. Sarah stood there looking nervous but hopeful. "Hello?" she said softly, her eyes darting between Marcus and Elizabeth. Marcus welcomed her in, introducing himself briefly before stepping back to let the sisters face each other. Elizabeth's voice trembled as she spoke. "Hello, Sarah. It's been a long time." Sarah nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Too long, Liz. I've missed you so much." The air was thick with tension as Sarah sat down across from Elizabeth. Marcus busied himself in the kitchen, giving them privacy, but staying close enough to offer support if needed. "Why now?" Elizabeth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "After all these years?" Sarah took a deep breath. I was wrong, Liz. I should have been there for you after your accident. I was scared and selfish, and I'm so sorry." Elizabeth felt a surge of anger and hurt. "Scared? I was the one who needed you, Sarah. I was alone and terrified, and you just disappeared." Sarah's tears fell freely now. "I know. I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. Please, Liz, can we try?" Elizabeth's emotions overwhelmed her, and she found herself struggling to breathe. Marcus, sensing her distress, quickly came to her side. "It's okay, Elizabeth," he said softly, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "Take deep breaths. I'm right here." Sarah watched in awe as Marcus calmed Elizabeth, his presence clearly a source of comfort for her sister. As Elizabeth regained her composure, she looked at Sarah with a mix of pain and longing. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she said honestly, "but maybe we can start small. Maybe we can try to rebuild, slowly." Sarah nodded eagerly, relief washing over her face. "That's all I ask for, Liz. A chance." Marcus smiled encouragingly at Elizabeth, proud of her strength and willingness to open her heart. As Sarah and Elizabeth sat together, the tension in the room slowly began to ease. Marcus quietly excused himself, giving the sisters some privacy to talk. Elizabeth watched him go, drawing strength from his encouraging smile. "I've missed so much," Sarah said softly, her eyes taking in the changes in her sister's appearance. Can you tell me about your life now?" Elizabeth hesitated, then nodded. "It's been hard," she admitted, "but I'm learning to adapt, and I have help." Her eyes drifted towards the kitchen where Marcus had disappeared. Sarah smiled gently. "He seems wonderful. I'm glad you have someone like him in your life." Elizabeth felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Marcus has been a blessing," she said, surprised by the emotion in her own voice. "He's helped me see that life can still be beautiful, even after everything that's happened." As they talked, Elizabeth found herself sharing more about her daily life, her struggles, and her small victories. Sarah listened intently, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and admiration. "I wish I had been here for you," Sarah said, her voice thick with regret. "But I'm here now, if you'll let me be." Elizabeth took a deep breath, remembering Marcus's words about forgiveness and second chances. "It won't be easy," she said slowly, "but I think I'd like to try." Sarah's face lit up with hope. "Really? Oh, Liz, thank you. I promise I'll do better this time." As they continued to talk, Elizabeth felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. It wasn't perfect, and there was still a long way to go, but it was a start. When Marcus returned with tea, he found the sisters looking at old family photos that Sarah had brought. Their laughter filled the room, a sound that made Marcus's heart swell with joy. Elizabeth caught his eye and mouthed a silent "thank you." Marcus nodded, his smile warm and proud. He knew that this small step towards healing was a huge leap for Elizabeth, and he couldn't have been happier for her. As the days passed, Elizabeth couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in Marcus. His usual energetic step had slowed, and dark circles had formed under his eyes. She watched with growing concern as he tried to hide his fatigue, always putting on a brave face for her. One morning, Marcus arrived later than usual, his breathing labored. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I just needed a little extra time today." Elizabeth's heart clenched with worry. "Marcus, please, sit down. You don't look well at all." He tried to brush off her concern, but Elizabeth wouldn't have it. "I may be in this chair, but I'm not blind," she said firmly. "You've done so much for me. Now it's my turn to help you." That evening, after Marcus had gone home, Elizabeth wheeled herself to her computer. She was determined to find a way to help him, just as he had helped her. She spent hours researching, looking up local clinics and support programs that might be able to assist Marcus with his health issues. As she scrolled through website after website, Elizabeth felt a new sense of purpose. She hadn't realized how much she'd come to care for Marcus until now, seeing him struggle. The thought of him facing his health problems alone was unbearable. "There has to be something I can do," she murmured to herself, jotting down notes and phone numbers. She remembered how Marcus had encouraged her to reconnect with her sister, how he had helped her rediscover her love for gardening. Now it was her turn to be there for him. Elizabeth's eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she pressed on. She found information on free health clinics, support groups for caregivers, and even some local charities that might be able to help with Marcus's financial struggles. As the night wore on, Elizabeth felt a mix of determination and hope. She might be confined to her wheelchair, but that didn't mean she was helpless. She would find a way to help Marcus, to repay the kindness he had shown her. It was the least she could do for the man who had brought light back into her life. As Elizabeth delved deeper into her research, her eyes widened at an unexpected discovery. There, on her computer screen, was information about an experimental surgery that claimed to potentially restore mobility for patients with spinal cord injuries. Her heart began to race as she read through the details. The surgery, still in its early stages, involved cutting-edge stem cell therapy and neural implants. It promised a chance at regaining some, if not all, movement for people like Elizabeth. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the page, absorbing every word. Could this be real? She whispered to herself, hardly daring to believe it. A mix of emotions washed over her. Excitement bubbled up inside her chest, making her feel lightheaded. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine standing up, taking a step, maybe even walking in her beloved garden again. But as quickly as the excitement came, fear crept in. The surgery was risky, with no guarantees of success. What if it didn't work? What if it made things worse? The thought of getting her hopes up, only to have them dashed again, was almost too much to bear. Elizabeth's mind raced with possibilities. She thought about how this could change her life, how it could give her back the independence she had lost. But then she remembered the pain and disappointment of her initial recovery, the crushing realization that she might never walk again. Am I strong enough to go through all that again? She asked herself, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. As she sat there, conflicted and overwhelmed, Elizabeth's thoughts turned to Marcus. She wondered what he would say, how he would encourage her. His unwavering support had been her rock these past months. Would he think she was crazy for even considering such a risky procedure? Elizabeth's fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between wanting to learn more and feeling terrified of what she might find out. The possibility of regaining her mobility was tantalizing, but the fear of failure loomed large. The next morning, Elizabeth couldn't contain her excitement. As soon as Marcus arrived, she called out to him, her voice filled with a mix of hope and nervousness. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something important," she said as he entered her room. Marcus noticed the change in her tone immediately. "What is it, Elizabeth? Is everything okay?" Elizabeth took a deep breath and explained about the experimental surgery she had discovered. As she spoke, her eyes lit up with a spark that Marcus hadn't seen before. "It's risky, but it could give me a chance to walk again," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you think?" Marcus listened carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. When Elizabeth finished, he sat down next to her, his eyes filled with concern. "Elizabeth, that's amazing news," he said softly. "But are you sure about this? Experimental surgeries can be really dangerous." Elizabeth nodded, understanding his worry. "I know, Marcus. But for the first time in years, I feel like there's hope. I can't ignore this chance." Marcus reached out and gently took her hand. "I get it, I really do. But I'm worried about you. What if something goes wrong?" Elizabeth squeezed his hand, touched by his concern. "That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. Your opinion means a lot to me." As they discussed the pros and cons, Elizabeth's determination grew stronger. She thought about all the things she could do if the surgery was successful. Tend to her garden without help, maybe even dance again. But more than that, she thought about how she could help Marcus if she regained her mobility. She could support him the way he had supported her. "Marcus," she said, her voice firm, "I know it's risky, but I have to try. I want to walk again, not just for me, but for you too. You've done so much for me, and I want to be able to help you too." Marcus's eyes welled up with tears. He was moved by Elizabeth's words and her courage. Despite his fears, he could see how much this meant to her. "Okay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "If this is what you want, I'll support you every step of the way. We'll face this together, just like everything else." Elizabeth felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. With Marcus by her side, she felt ready to take on this new challenge, no matter how daunting it might be. Elizabeth sat nervously in the doctor's office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Marcus stood behind her wheelchair, offering silent support. The specialist, Dr. Thompson, entered the room with a warm smile and a thick folder of papers. "Ms. Elizabeth," Dr. Thompson greeted, taking a seat across from her. "I understand you're interested in our experimental surgery program." Elizabeth nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am." Dr. Thompson opened the folder and began explaining the procedure. "This surgery aims to repair damaged nerve connections in your spinal cord. It's a complex process that involves stem cell therapy and advanced microsurgery techniques." As the doctor spoke, Elizabeth listened intently, her eyes wide with hope and fear. Marcus squeezed her shoulder gently, reminding her of his presence. "Now, I must stress that this is still experimental," Dr. Thompson continued, his tone becoming more serious. "While we've seen promising results in some patients, there are significant risks involved." Elizabeth swallowed hard. "What kind of risks?" The doctor leaned forward, his eyes meeting Elizabeth's. "The most severe risk is further damage to your spinal cord, which could worsen your condition. There's also a risk of infection, blood clots, and adverse reactions to the stem cell treatment." Elizabeth felt her heart sink. The possibility of her condition worsening hadn't fully hit her until now. "On the other hand," Dr. Thompson added, "if successful, you could regain partial or even full mobility. But I want to be clear, there are no guarantees." Elizabeth turned to look at Marcus, seeking reassurance in his eyes. He gave her a small nod, encouraging her to ask questions. What are the chances of success?" Elizabeth asked, her voice shaking slightly. Dr. Thompson sighed. "Based on our current data, about 30% of patients show significant improvement. Another 40% see minor improvements. The remaining 30% either see no change or experience complications." The weight of the decision pressed down on Elizabeth. The possibility of walking again was tantalizing, but the risks were terrifying. She thought about her garden, about dancing, about helping Marcus, but she also thought about losing what independence she still had. "Take some time to think about it," Dr. Thompson said gently. "This is a big decision, and you shouldn't rush it. I'll give you some literature to review, and we can schedule a follow-up appointment to discuss any questions you might have." As the doctor handed her a stack of papers, Elizabeth felt overwhelmed. The path ahead was unclear, filled with both hope and danger. She looked up at Marcus, grateful for his steady presence as she faced this life-changing decision. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she handed Marcus a folded piece of paper. Her eyes, filled with a mix of determination and nervousness, met his curious gaze. "What's this?" Marcus asked softly, unfolding the note. As he read, his eyes widened and he looked up at Elizabeth in shock. You're going to have the surgery? And you want to pay for my medical treatment?" Elizabeth nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Marcus, I've made up my mind." Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed by her words. "Elizabeth, I can't let you do this. The surgery is so risky, and my health, it's not your responsibility." Elizabeth reached out and took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Marcus, you've given me so much. You've helped me find hope again. This is my chance to give something back." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes. "But what if something goes wrong? I couldn't bear it if—" "I know the risks," Elizabeth interrupted gently, "but I also know that I want to try. And I want you to be healthy too. We can do this together." Marcus sat down heavily in the chair next to Elizabeth's wheelchair. He looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. "Are you sure about this?" Elizabeth nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Okay, if this is what you really want, I'll support you. But promise me you'll be careful." Elizabeth squeezed his hand. "I promise, and you have to promise me you'll take care of yourself too." Marcus nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I promise." As they sat there, hands clasped, both felt a surge of hope and fear for the future. but they also felt the strength of their bond, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the days leading up to Elizabeth's surgery approached, the atmosphere in the house changed. A mix of excitement and nervous energy filled the air, replacing the once gloomy silence. Elizabeth and Marcus spent their time preparing, both physically and emotionally. Elizabeth's determination shone through as she worked with her physical therapist, pushing herself harder than ever before. Marcus watched in awe as she gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead, refusing to give up. "You're doing great, Elizabeth," Marcus encouraged, handing her a glass of water after a particularly grueling session. Elizabeth took a sip, her breath still ragged. "I have to be ready," she said, her eyes filled with fierce determination. "I want to give myself the best chance possible." Marcus nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "And you will. I believe in you." Their evenings were spent going over the surgery details, with Marcus helping Elizabeth understand the medical jargon. They sat side by side, poring over pamphlets and websites, their heads close together as they discussed the procedure. "Are you scared?" Marcus asked one night, noticing Elizabeth's hands trembling slightly as she turned a page. Elizabeth paused, considering the question. "Yes," she admitted softly, "but I'm more excited than scared. For the first time in years, I feel hopeful." Marcus reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I'm here for you, every step of the way." Elizabeth looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Marcus." As the surgery date drew nearer, their bond grew stronger. They found themselves sharing quiet moments of companionship, drawing strength from each other's presence. Elizabeth opened up about her fears, and Marcus listened, offering comfort and reassurance. One evening, as they sat in the garden they had nurtured together, Elizabeth turned to Marcus. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice filled with emotion. Marcus looked at her, puzzled. "For what?" "For everything," Elizabeth replied, her eyes meeting his. "For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For being here. For caring. For loving me." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He reached out and gently cupped Elizabeth's face in his hands. "Elizabeth, loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done." The day of Elizabeth's surgery arrived, casting a blanket of nervous anticipation over the hospital. Marcus sat in the waiting room, his hands clasped tightly together, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. The sterile white walls and the faint smell of disinfectant only heightened his anxiety. As the hours ticked by, Marcus's mind wandered through the memories of his time with Elizabeth. He remembered their first meeting, her cold demeanor slowly melting away as they worked together in the garden. He thought of their late-night talks, the laughter they shared, and the tears they'd wiped away. A lump formed in his throat as he recalled Elizabeth's determination during her physical therapy sessions. Her strength and resilience had been a constant source of inspiration for him. Now, as she lay on the operating table, Marcus prayed that same strength would carry her through. The emotional weight of the moment pressed down on Marcus. He closed his eyes, taking deep breaths to steady himself. In his mind's eye, he saw Elizabeth smile, heard her voice, felt the warmth of her hand in his. Their journey together had been filled with ups and downs, but through it all, their bond had only grown stronger. Marcus opened his eyes, glancing at the clock on the wall. The surgery was taking longer than expected. He tried to reassure himself that this was normal, that the doctors were being thorough. Still, worry gnawed at him. A nurse passed by, offering him a sympathetic smile. Marcus managed a weak smile in return, grateful for the small gesture of kindness. He thought about how Elizabeth had changed him, how her love had given him strength he didn't know he possessed. As he waited, Marcus's thoughts turned to the future. He dared to hope for a world where Elizabeth could walk again, where they could stroll hand in hand through the garden they'd nurtured together. But even if the surgery wasn't successful, he knew their love would endure. They had faced so much already. They could face anything together. Elizabeth's eyelids fluttered open, her vision blurry as she slowly regained consciousness. The stark white ceiling of the hospital room came into focus, and she blinked, trying to orient herself. A warm, familiar hand gently squeezed hers, and she turned her head to see Marcus's face, his eyes brimming with tears of joy. "Hey there, sleepyhead," Marcus said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome back." Elizabeth tried to speak, but her throat felt dry and scratchy. Marcus quickly offered her a small sip of water through a straw. As the cool liquid soothed her throat, Elizabeth felt a surge of hope wash over her. How did it go?" she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse but filled with anticipation. Marcus's smile widened, his eyes shining with excitement. "The doctors say the initial signs are really positive, Elizabeth. They're hopeful about your recovery." Elizabeth's eyes welled up with tears, a mix of relief and cautious optimism flooding through her. She tried to move, to feel if anything was different, but her body felt heavy and unresponsive. "Easy now," Marcus said gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's going to take some time, but I promise you, I'll be right here with you every step of the way." Elizabeth nodded, feeling overwhelmed by the emotions coursing through her. She looked at Marcus, seeing the love and dedication in his eyes, and felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "for everything." Marcus leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "You don't need to thank me, Elizabeth. We're in this together, remember? And I can't wait to see you take your first steps in that garden of ours." Elizabeth smiled weakly, the image of walking through their beloved garden filling her with determination. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but with Marcus by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came their way. Elizabeth's recovery was a journey of small victories and occasional setbacks. Each day brought new challenges, but also new reasons to hope. Marcus was by her side every step of the way, his unwavering support a constant source of strength for Elizabeth. In the weeks following the surgery, Elizabeth worked tirelessly with her physical therapists. The exercises were grueling, often leaving her exhausted and frustrated. But Marcus was always there, offering words of encouragement and a gentle touch when she needed it most. "You've got this, Elizabeth," he'd say, his voice filled with conviction. "Remember how far you've come already." Slowly but surely, Elizabeth began to regain sensation in her legs. The first time she wiggled her toes, tears of joy streamed down her face. Marcus whooped with excitement, his own eyes glistening with happiness. As Elizabeth's mobility improved, so did Marcus's health. The medical treatment Elizabeth had insisted on financing was working wonders. His energy levels increased, and the constant fatigue that had plagued him for months began to lift. "I feel like a new man," Marcus confessed one afternoon as they sat in the garden, watching the flowers they'd planted together bloom. "And it's all thanks to you, Elizabeth." Elizabeth reached out and squeezed his hand. "We're helping each other heal," she said softly. "That's what matters." Their bond deepened with each passing day. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Elizabeth found herself opening up about parts of her past she'd never shared with anyone before. Marcus listened with rapt attention, offering comfort and understanding. In turn, Marcus shared more about his own life, his childhood dreams, his struggles, and the love that had shaped him into the man he was. Elizabeth marveled at his resilience and kindness, feeling blessed to have him in her life. As Elizabeth's strength grew, so did her determination to walk again. With Marcus's steady support, she took her first tentative steps, her legs shaky but her spirit unbreakable. The moment was filled with a mix of triumph and overwhelming emotion. "You did it!" Marcus exclaimed, his face beaming with pride. "I knew you could, Elizabeth. I always believed in you." Elizabeth's eyes shone with tears of joy as she looked at Marcus. "We did it," she corrected him, her voice filled with love and gratitude. "Together." Elizabeth's journey through physical therapy was a testament to her newfound strength and determination. Each session brought new challenges, but she faced them head-on, bolstered by Marcus's unwavering support. The therapy room became their battleground where Elizabeth fought to regain control of her body. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she gripped the parallel bars, her arms shaking with effort. Marcus stood nearby, his eyes never leaving her face. "You've got this, Elizabeth," he encouraged softly. "One step at a time." Elizabeth's therapist, Sarah, watched in awe as the pair worked together. She had never seen such dedication from a caregiver before. Marcus anticipated Elizabeth's needs before she even voiced them, always ready with a towel, a sip of water, or a word of encouragement. As the weeks passed, Elizabeth's progress became noticeable. Her steps grew steadier, her balance improved, and her confidence blossomed. The other patients in the therapy center began to take notice, drawing inspiration from Elizabeth's determination and Marcus's unwavering support. One day, as Elizabeth rested between exercises, an elderly man in a wheelchair approached them. "You two are something special," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Watching you gives me hope for my own recovery." Elizabeth and Marcus exchanged a glance, both touched by the man's words. They hadn't realized the impact they were having on those around them. Sarah, the therapist, noticed the change in the atmosphere of the entire center. Other patients began to push themselves harder, inspired by Elizabeth's progress. Caregivers, too, seemed to take a cue from Marcus, showing more patience and offering more encouragement to their charges. "You've become quite the inspiration around here," Sarah told them one day. "Your dedication is contagious." Elizabeth blushed at the praise, but Marcus beamed with pride. "Elizabeth's the real hero," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm just along for the ride." But Elizabeth shook her head. "We're in this together," she insisted. "I couldn't do it without you, Marcus." Their shared determination and the strength of their bond continued to inspire everyone around them, turning their personal journey into a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. Elizabeth's progress in physical therapy was nothing short of remarkable. Day by day, she pushed herself harder, driven by a newfound determination and Marcus's unwavering support. The once quiet therapy room now echoed with Elizabeth's grunts of effort and Marcus's gentle words of encouragement. One sunny afternoon, Elizabeth achieved a milestone that brought tears to both their eyes. With trembling legs and sweat-drenched hair, she took her first unassisted steps since the accident. Marcus watched in awe, his heart swelling with pride and joy. "You did it, Elizabeth," he exclaimed, his voice thick with emotion. "Look at you go." Elizabeth's face beamed with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it, Marcus," she corrected him, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "I couldn't have done this without you." Their celebrations weren't limited to the big moments. Every small victory was cause for joy. The first time Elizabeth could brush her own hair, the day she managed to prepare a simple meal, or when she surprised Marcus by wheeling herself out to the garden without assistance. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset, Elizabeth turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "I never thought I'd feel this alive again," she confessed. "You've given me back so much more than just mobility, Marcus. You've given me hope." Marcus felt his own eyes well up. "You did all the hard work, Elizabeth. I'm just grateful to be here with you, watching you bloom like these flowers." Their shared laughter filled the air, a sound that had become increasingly common in the once somber house. As the golden light of the setting sun bathed them in a warm glow, Elizabeth and Marcus sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, both marveling at how far they'd come and the deep bond they'd forged along the way. Elizabeth's family arrived on a bright Saturday morning, the air filled with nervous anticipation. Her sister, Sarah, and brother, Michael, hesitated at the front door, unsure of what to expect. Marcus greeted them warmly, his gentle smile easing their tension. "She's in the garden," Marcus said, leading them through the house. "She's been looking forward to your visit." As they stepped into the backyard, Sarah gasped. There was Elizabeth, standing with the support of a walker, tending to a vibrant flower bed. The siblings watched in awe as their sister, once bedridden and bitter, now moved with purpose and determination. "Lizzie?" Michael called out, his voice cracking with emotion. Elizabeth turned, her face lighting up. "Michael, Sarah, you're here." She took a few wobbly steps towards them, Marcus hovering nearby, ready to assist if needed. Sarah rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Lizzie, look at you," she exclaimed, embracing her sister carefully. "You're standing. You're gardening." Michael joined the hug, his broad shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "We've missed you so much, sis," he murmured. As the family reunited, Marcus quietly stepped back, giving them space. But Elizabeth wouldn't have it. "Marcus," she called, gesturing for him to join them. "Come here. I want you to meet my family properly." With a shy smile, Marcus approached. Elizabeth beamed at him, her eyes full of gratitude and affection. "This is Marcus," she said to her siblings. "He's the reason I'm standing here today. He never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself." Sarah and Michael turned to Marcus, their expressions a mix of gratitude and admiration. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, reaching out to clasp Marcus's hand. "Thank you for bringing our sister back to us." Michael nodded, his eyes glistening. "We can never repay you for what you've done," he added. Marcus shook his head humbly. "Elizabeth did all the hard work," he insisted. "I'm just glad I could be here to support her." As the day progressed, the family gathered in the garden, sharing stories and laughter. Elizabeth showed off her progress, taking small steps with Marcus's steadying hand nearby. Her siblings watched in wonder, their hearts full of joy and regret for the time they'd lost. As the weeks passed, Marcus's health improved dramatically. The dark circles under his eyes faded, and his energy returned in full force. Elizabeth watched with joy as her friend regained his vitality, his smile brighter than ever. One sunny afternoon, they sat together in the garden, surrounded by the colorful blooms they had nurtured. Marcus leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath of the fragrant air. "You know, Elizabeth," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "I never thought I'd feel this good again. It's like I've been given a second chance." Elizabeth reached out and squeezed his hand. "You deserve it, Marcus. You've done so much for others. It's time you focus on yourself, too." Marcus nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Seeing your journey, it's inspired me. I want to do more with my life." "What are you thinking?" Elizabeth asked, her eyes sparkling with interest. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "I've always wanted to be a nurse. Helping people, making a difference. It's what I love most. I think I'm ready to go back to school and make that dream a reality." Elizabeth clapped her hands together, beaming. "Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful. You'd make an amazing nurse." They spent the next hour talking excitedly about Marcus's plans. He shared his worries about balancing work and school, but Elizabeth reassured him, offering her unwavering support. "What about you, Elizabeth?" Marcus asked, turning the conversation to her. "What dreams are you chasing now?" Elizabeth's eyes lit up. "I've been thinking about teaching art classes for people with disabilities. My experience has shown me how healing creativity can be. I want to share that with others." Marcus grinned, picturing Elizabeth in front of a class, paintbrush in hand. "That sounds perfect for you. You'd be an inspiration to so many people." As they continued to talk, their excitement grew. They bounced ideas off each other, their voices filled with hope and enthusiasm for the future. The garden around them seemed to reflect their optimism, vibrant and full of life. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Elizabeth's house as usual, his mind buzzing with excitement about his plans for nursing school. He knocked on the door, waiting for Elizabeth's familiar call to come in. But today, silence greeted him. Concerned, Marcus used his key to enter. "Elizabeth," he called out, his voice tinged with worry. "Are you okay?" He heard movement from the living room and made his way there, his heart pounding. As he stepped through the doorway, he froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. There, in the middle of the room, stood Elizabeth. Her legs trembled slightly, but she was upright, a brilliant smile lighting up her face. "Elizabeth," Marcus gasped, tears immediately springing to his eyes. You're standing." Elizabeth nodded, her own eyes brimming with tears of joy. "I wanted to surprise you," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "I've been practicing in secret, waiting for this moment." Marcus rushed forward, his arms outstretched. Elizabeth took a shaky step towards him, and they met in a warm embrace. They held each other tightly, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of this moment. "I can't believe it," Marcus whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You did it, Elizabeth. You really did it." Elizabeth pulled back slightly, looking into Marcus's eyes. "We did it, Marcus. I couldn't have done this without you. Your kindness, your support. You gave me the strength to keep going." They stood there, arms around each other, tears streaming down their faces. The room seemed to glow with the warmth of their shared joy and triumph. "You've changed my life, Elizabeth," Marcus said softly. "You've shown me what true strength and determination look like. You've inspired me to chase my dreams." Elizabeth smiled through her tears. "And you, Marcus, you've taught me how to live again. You brought light back into my world when I thought all hope was lost." They hugged again, both marveling at how far they had come and the profound impact they had on each other's lives. In that moment, surrounded by love and joy, they knew that together they could face any challenge that lay ahead. As Elizabeth and Marcus stood together, their embrace slowly loosened, but their connection remained strong. They moved to sit on the nearby couch, both still overwhelmed by the emotions of the moment. Elizabeth took Marcus's hand in hers, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I never thought I'd be here," she said softly. "When you first came into my life, I was so lost, so angry, but you never gave up on me." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "And look at you now," he replied, his voice filled with pride. "You're standing, you're smiling, you're living again, Elizabeth." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The garden outside the window, once neglected, now bloomed with vibrant colors, a testament to their shared efforts and growing bond. "You know," Elizabeth began, her voice thoughtful, "I think the most powerful kind of love is the one you can't see, the kind that shows up in small acts of kindness, in patience, in never giving up on someone." Marcus nodded, understanding deeply. "That's the love that heals," he agreed. "It's what you gave me too, Elizabeth. Your support, your belief in me. It changed everything." Elizabeth smiled, her eyes misting over again. "We healed each other, didn't we?" "We did," Marcus affirmed. "And now look at us. We're both moving forward, chasing our dreams. Who would have thought?" They looked out the window, towards the garden and the world beyond. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities they had once thought lost. "So what's next for us?" Elizabeth asked, a hint of excitement in her voice. Marcus grinned. "Well, I start nursing school next month, and you?" "I think," Elizabeth said slowly, "I might start painting again. And maybe I'll reach out to some old friends, start rebuilding those connections." They sat together hand in hand, their hearts full of hope and gratitude. The journey had been long and often difficult, but the love they had found, in friendship, in mutual support, in believing in each other, had transformed their lives in ways they never could have imagined. Would you be as patient as Marcus in taking care of Elizabeth? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel. I am spending hours upon hours writing these heartwarming stories for you, and your support is what keeps me going.